I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could we stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kim, are you all set with roll call?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, approval of the agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the agenda for the November 15th, 2021 regular Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion, please? That was static. I didn't hear who that was. Oh, Matt first. Second, Joan. All in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. Next up on the agenda is the Board of Education Spotlight, so I'll turn this over to Superintendent Thompson.
Thank you. For this meeting, the board would like to recognize and honor the following Baldwinsville Central School District Baldwin Central School District students, teacher, and staff for their outstanding achievements and accomplishments. The board would like to honor and recognize the 7 C.W. Baker High School students for their extraordinary accomplishment for being selected for one of the prestigious New York State School Musical Association, otherwise known as NYSSMA, All-State Music Conference. 6 students were selected as alternates, and 1 student was selected to participate in the mixed choir on Saturday, December 2nd, 2021 at the Eastman Theater in Rochester. Congratulations to all and all of our all-state singers for this year. The first one is Emily Garcia. Evan Burmeister. Jillian Parker. Finian Sari. Gordon Flood. Keenan Smith. And Lauren Gascon. Would the students please come join Mrs. Geckel and I up front here for a photo, please? Awesome job.
I'd just like to say something. Congratulations to all of you on this honor. It's definitely the result of hard work and dedication to your passion in music. We're very proud of you, and we thank you for sharing your talents with us. And we'd also like to thank the families and staff who've guided you and supported you as you try and reach your goals in the music program. Congratulations and a job well done. Okay, moving on to the next part of the meeting is the correspondence, board activities, and committee reports. On November 8th, we had a work session with the cabinet up at the Transportation Center. This work session was two-part. The first part has to do with the proposed capital project, and that will be discussed later on. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, later on in the board, that will be on the leadership report. And then also we talked a little bit about the quarterly data report and how the board would like to see that this year. Then we had a special Board of Education meeting after that where we went right into executive session. On Monday, November 15th, we had a Facilities Committee meeting prior to this meeting. And again, Mr. Dingle said that that will be discussed as part of the leadership report. So there's nothing to report out on that. Our upcoming events are November 18th, we have a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee meeting held at the Transportation Center. November 24th, we'll be off from school for Thanksgiving holiday, and the 25th and 26th for Thanksgiving as well. And the district offices will be closed that Thursday and Friday. December 6th is our next regular Board of Education meeting with a policy meeting prior to that. December 7th is a Mental Wellness Committee. Virtual presentation discussion. That is their fall event that they're putting on this year. And then on December 13th, we have the superintendent informal evaluation. And at the bottom of that page is the budget advisory committee meetings where we have community members help the board and the cabinet give input on the upcoming budget. And you can see the different topics and when those meetings are held. And I'm not sure, can community members still volunteer for that? Because I know some of them are as late as January. I'm seeing yes. So if there's anybody out there who would like to be part of that, you're more than welcome to sign up and to call the district office. Next up, we have the student board report. Kaylee Evans, you are up.
Thank you. Starting off with an update on Baker's Gratefulness projects. So Acceptance Coalition made thank you posters for the counseling office. Sophomore Council is making candy bee grams to show gratefulness for staff at Baker, and Senior Council is baking treats to leave in classrooms. Also, Baker Student Advisory Council's next meeting will be November 30th. We had a football game last Saturday against CNS. The Beeville's team didn't win. They fought hard and ended the season strong. The junior high production of Moana was this past weekend. I got to go see that, and it was amazing. The students are incredibly talented. It was amazing for such young kids especially. The Baldwinsville Marching Band marched in the Veterans Day Parade on November 6th. There was great energy there, and there was a great turnout. The Bind the Student survey is going out to students this week. It was sophomores today, juniors tomorrow, and seniors the next day. The survey asks students questions about their mental health, and it's used as a screening tool to measure students' social behavioral health. The results are used to help students develop skills in areas that they need it. For seniors, this is a very busy time as college application deadlines approach. The early application deadline for some schools was today, and there's a buzz at Baker, especially in the Guidance and Career Resource Center. Overall, this month has been really busy so far, and students are really looking forward to holiday break.
Well, Kaylee, with a list like that, I can understand why. Thank you so much for the report this week. Next up on the agenda, we have requests to speak. Do we have anybody? No requests to speak this week. Moving on to the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Joan first, Jeff second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. Let's see. Next up on the agenda, we have the leadership report, so I'll hand it back to Superintendent Thompson.
Thank you. First up, we would like to invite Cindy Cronin and the Van Buren Elementary team to present on their strategic plan. Please, and thank you.
Thanks, RJ. Can you hear me? Oh, yes, you can. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you this evening Van Buren Elementary's strategic plan for the 2021-22 school year. Students and staff are happy to be back together again this year, and our staff has been working hard to assess learning gaps to ensure that all students are fully supported. You'll see in the presentation that goals 1 and 2 are familiar. They're a continuation of the plan that was adopted in the 2019-2020 school year, so the first year that ended with COVID. Goal 3 focuses on school environment and inclusivity, and so you'll see that that's a newer goal, an adapted goal, because the previous goal 3 was on school environment, but this has a more specific focus. So I'd like to thank the staff that have come to present this evening. Kristen Fabry, who is our school social worker, Amy Morgan, who is our RTI math specialist, Mrs. Noelle Pennefeather, she is our 4th grade special education teacher in the co-teaching classroom, Renee Tyke, who is our speech teacher, one of our speech teachers, and of course Mrs. Howard, who is our administrative intern this year. So Mrs. Morgan is going to talk to you a little bit about our leadership teams and our collaborative teams at Van Buren, which will give you an idea of sort of the input from staff.
They didn't turn it on for me. Nice job, Mike. Okay, with a little technical difficulty here. At Van Buren, we have 3 leadership teams that meet monthly to specifically discuss progress toward the goals that will be shared with you next. Each leadership team focuses on one component of student support: academic, social and emotional, and school environment. These teams have representation from each grade level, special areas, and support services. PLCs, professional learning communities, are grade level teams that meet weekly with our RTI specialist, such as myself, to review student performance data, make instructional decisions, and plan needed interventions. Through shared decision-making, this collaborative structure ensures that all instructional staff are able to bring their professional expertise to the table. Mrs. Pennefeather is going to tell you about our academic goals.
First, our district goal of achieving educational excellence and high levels of learning for all. Our building goal is through consistent implementation of the Writer's Workshop model, writing units of study by Lucy Calkins, the Reading Workshop model, and RACES. Students will demonstrate writing improvement through the use of on-demand writing prompts and establish assessment rubrics to improve student performance on New York State grade 3 through 5 assessments.
All students receive high-quality Tier 1 instruction, and to ensure that students are progressing toward grade-level competency, all students participate in universal math and reading screenings using Ames Web and STAR. Through this screening and data collected in the classroom, we were able to determine which students may need additional academic supports. These supports are provided through RTI reading and math using flexible grouping across all grade levels.
In addition, prior to COVID, Van Buren teachers reviewed several years of New York State assessment data in ELA and math. As we dug deeper into the data, we could see that our students struggled particularly with the Ela Constructed Responses, where students are asked to apply their knowledge and skills to formulate more elaborate responses and explain their thinking. The building leadership team determined that while each teacher, 3rd through 5th, employed a writing protocol, they varied from class to class and grade to grade. We noted the success that our colleagues were having with the RACES writing protocol and adapted this in grades K through 5. So I believe the board is already familiar with the RACES writing protocol, but just as a quick reminder, each letter represents a component a student needs to include to completely answer a question, which is there demonstrated up under RACES. R being restating the question, A answering the question, C is citing examples from what they've read or for the text they're looking at, E is explaining their answer, and then S is summing it up. This is going to look different for each grade level. The common language is being used from year to year to help build upon their skills in a systematic manner. A fifth grader's response would most likely be expected to be in writing and include each and every one of those components, where all the way back down to kindergarten, a kindergartner might simply be making sure that they're restating the question when they're asked something orally. How was your weekend? My weekend was great, restating that before they answer those questions. And that's just how they were assessed when we collected the beginning of the year data that's up there for Q1. The benefit of a common protocol is that it provides consistency as students advance to the next grade level. Since the adoption of the RACES protocol, we haven't had state assessment data to measure progress on constructed responses. So we have adopted common writing assessments at every grade level to collect building-wide data. Mrs. Howard is going to introduce our second goal.
The second district goal is to promote collaboration, innovation, and flexibility to prepare students for their future. And our goal for our building is to support the social emotional learning and character development of all. We will continue the Positivity Project, as well as implement Second Step and restorative practices as Tier 1 supports for all students. So one step that we're taking this year to support students' emotional growth is setting up calming spaces in every classroom. Prior to the start of the school year, all classrooms received a set of materials to begin creating these spaces. We also had a training session with 2 of our learning coaches to support teachers in getting these spaces up and running effectively. Now students have a space in every room, including specials, OT, speech, all the different classrooms in the school, where they can go if they become sad, frustrated, upset, or even overly excited. With this structure, teachers become co-regulators because they teach students specific strategies that they can use when they become emotionally dysregulated. Mrs. Fabry, our social worker, will tell you a little bit more about other social emotional supports that we have in place to meet this goal.
When students struggle to read, we implement additional supports and interventions. So in the same way, students that need additional supports to manage their social emotional needs, each student may need something different. Some things that we do at Van Buren, check-in, check-outs for kids can be very effective. We know that when students have a personal connection to an adult that encourages attendance, it encourages academic performance, it encourages social and behavioral progress. So that can be anyone in the building. There are many students that check and check out with me daily. Many students choose a teacher that they've had in the past. It's really great that we have a math RTI teacher who is one of the most beloved people in the building. So math can be a very stressful trigger for kids. So if a student's coming to me and saying, I'm getting anxious every day at math, I'm going to touch base with Amy and say, hey, when you're in that classroom, I know the student is on your list. I know they don't need it, but it's causing them stress. Will you just check in with them? The relief of anxiety for students, just when someone takes that moment to check in, acknowledge how they're feeling, give them that support, can be hugely beneficial to student success. Morning meetings in classrooms to help build that sense of community, connectedness to one another, problem-solving skills. There are the tiered in-class strategies like the ones described by Mrs. Howard. Restorative practices is something we use to provide the opportunity to learn from a problem that has occurred and to repair harm that is done in order to rebuild and maintain relationships amongst peers. Second step is our SEL curriculum. For the past few years, I've been going into classrooms and teaching specific lessons. This year, we are utilizing the program even more. Grade levels have come to me asking for the kit, asking for advice on how to incorporate different activities and lessons into their daily work with their students. We also use individual lessons to address individual student needs. School counselor, Mrs. Finglin, has started some small lunch groups with students to help with some just lunchtime anxiety, social skill building, friendship skills. Problem solving sometimes requires a team, And our support staff includes myself, the social worker, the psychologist, Ms. Howard, Mrs. Cronin, the school counselor, learning coaches, and collaboration between school and family is most important. Mrs. Cronin is going to tell you more about the coordination of the support team.
So last spring, I had presented to you, we wanted to gauge how our 3rd through 5th grade students were experiencing their hybrid learning days. So we administered a short questionnaire asking students to give us feedback on their remote days and their in-person days. And not surprisingly, students on their hybrid remote days were feeling disconnected from school, disconnected from their peers, and they missed their friends in the alternate cohort. So this year, we have our asset team, which stands for Attendance Support and Student Engagement Team. And that's made up of the folks Mrs. Fabry mentioned. So it's me and Mrs. Fabry, Mrs. Howard, our school psychologist. And what we talk about specifically is really trying to predict students who may be at risk on a couple of different fronts. So we are working on early identification of students who are or have the potential of being chronically absent. And from the very beginning of the year, you can start to see those trends. So we're watching that very carefully. We're measuring and promoting positive school engagement from a student perspective to better understand how they're experiencing this year, coming back and being all together again. And we also disaggregate and review the BIMAS data to inform us where students may be struggling. So when we take all of those components, such as attendance data, which includes being absent from school or tardy, frequently tardy from school, and we compare that also with the student's BIMAS results, then we start to compile a picture of each individual student, and we can start to have those conversations internally about what we can do, but also engaging the parent in those conversations. So ASSET works with students, teachers, and families to ensure that they are in school and have positive connections with school. So Mrs. Howard's going to tell you a little bit more about the BIMAS.
So the BIMAS data that you see up on the screen is actually from spring of 2021. We're about halfway through our data collection for the fall, but the data that we have currently is kind of mirroring what we see from spring of 2021. So this set of data is actually the SEL core competencies. It's kind of a different lens of looking at it, and it's tricky to see, so I can read across the top. The categories are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. So we're going to continue to collect our data, and we look forward to using this data and the data from our upcoming progress monitoring periods across the whole year. And our goal is to do what we call grow the green. So we really want to see our red and our yellow section shrinking so that more students are moving into more of like the typical and strength ranges using our BIMAS data. We're going to go now into our third goal.
Is that on? The third district goal is to ensure equal access, opportunity, and choice for all students. Our building goal is that we will create an inclusive, welcoming environment to all children, giving them the opportunity to affirm their life experiences and give them the background knowledge to have empathy for all other people. We know that student learning outcomes are improved by an inclusive school environment, which also prepares them to thrive in a diverse and interconnected world. Our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee team and staff are committed to ensuring that all students are seen and feel included. While we have always attempted to ensure that all classrooms and our school is a warm and welcoming environment, the work of our DEI team this year is to build staff understanding and capacity to look closely at our policies and practices to see where we can do better. We are looking at things like, how do we reevaluate teaching and classroom materials? Do all students feel represented and included? And are we including everyone's story? Do materials encourage social awareness and appreciation of different perspectives? Are some voices and perspectives missing, and how do we include them? Are we using language and materials that reinforce existing stereotypes? To begin building this capacity, our DEI team and our staff have participated in summer and monthly meetings throughout this year. We have participated in ongoing professional development with Dr. Shiraki Holly. We've participated in book studies and other professional development opportunities provided by the district. And we are in the process of preparing, we will conduct a survey for our staff to determine a baseline for this work in our building.
So as Mrs. Tyke has communicated, it is our newest mission, even though it's been ongoing, to elevate equity, diversity, and inclusion for all members of our school community. So I hope we've been able to convey that from the beginning when we talked about our collaborative teams and through the presentation, that student engagement, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are a lot of folks that are involved, and we are working together internally, but one of those primary factors that we can't forget is the communication with home and the engagement of families at school. So we know that we can improve upon our communication. So even though this represents a small portion of our staff that's committed to helping students meet their goals, we're trying to really enhance our communication so that we can bring families into our school and make them feel that they are also welcomed and not just our students. So to help continue to communicate throughout the school, we have a weekly newsletter for staff that talks about events and opportunities and our building goals and talks about relevant and current information about these three goals. But we're also noticing that enhancing our connections and communications with all families will help us better know and understand our students, and through the students, the families, to better help us fully support students in all areas that we shared with you this evening. So a family's connection with school is a critical component of student engagement. So we've transformed our family and community newsletter to make it more accessible to families who may be only accessing the internet on a handheld phone. So what we noticed is our old way of doing newsletters, we didn't have any data about how many people were accessing. It seemed through conversations that families were not accessing the news and updates that were happening in school. So I switched platforms. I switched to S'more. If anybody's ever used S'more, it's very user-friendly. It looks great on a handheld device and also on a computer. And so that's really helped us garner information. We have 510 students in our school. When we can hit 350 views on the newsletter, that's really meaningful. And we know that families return to that newsletter to check out information. One area that we were not doing great about is we have, again, I mentioned families who have access only on a handheld device. Some families don't use email, and so they weren't getting this news. And we have other families who are not, who do not speak English in the home. So we have started producing the letter through S'more. We're able to produce the letter in languages other than English. So this is a banner of the Spanish translation. So we're sending home Spanish versions, Russian versions, and versions in English for the families who do not use the internet regularly. So again, thank you so much for inviting us here to talk to you about our plans for this year and the ongoing work that we're doing to support students. Do you have any questions at this time?
With technology, apparently. I also would like to check in and check out when I do math tomorrow morning. But thank you for all that you're doing. Have you noticed any uptick in engagement since you've been sending out those newsletters in the different languages to reflect the families that you have in your school?
Well, so I've only started doing that in the past month, because that was honestly one of my aha moments when we get into habits of doing things the way we've always done them. And it just came to me, like, maybe not everybody's looking at this information. So I don't know yet. I do know one of the families, English-speaking families, who is now getting the newsletter in written form. She's called me the first couple of times, say, what is this? Why are you sending me this? And once I was able to explain it, then I could tell that she was getting more information about what was happening at school, and she was happy to receive it.
I have a feeling that you're probably going to have an uptick, and I'm really excited to hear about that the next time you guys are here, so thank you.
I think it's really about not making assumptions, right? It's really stopping and being mindful and thoughtful about how we do school business.
Just a technical question on that. How do we translate them? And do we have a service that we can like do any language so we can?
Thank you, Google Translate.
Okay. So we have the means to do it and pretty much service anybody in the district?
So what we do, the family newsletter, I produce it on S'more, and then S'more has the translation. So we have the pro version, which allows us to translate into any language that Google will translate it into. I don't read Russian, so I'm told that the translation is pretty good. No, and then I connect that link through School Messenger, which is the way we communicate with all families, and through School Messenger, then they click on the links, and that's when the data comes back through some more about how many families are accessing. We use the same platform for the newsletter that goes out now to staff. We call it the Van Buren Highlighter, so it's the highlights of the week. And gives important information, and we can also see how many staff are looking at that. So when I send it on a Friday afternoon and I know 50 staff members have looked at it by Saturday morning, they need to take time off.
So maybe a good topic for the next communication committee for maybe the buzz, that when we send that out in multiple languages. Maybe we do that, and I didn't know that, but it sounds like a great idea.
I would like to ask about the check-in and check-out process. That's amazing. That's amazing. And is it any student can talk to any staff member at any time for their check-in and check-out?
It's about creating their habits too. Students who walk in, we need to be watching our kids and seeing what their affect is when they come into the school. So some are very naturally going to adults and talking about whatever is foremost on their mind. Others' children are less apt to do that. So it's either a parent tells us, and that's why that home school connection is so important, or a teacher is telling us, or another student is saying, hey, my friend looks sad today, or through morning meeting, we're finding out that maybe something challenging or troubling or just on their minds is occurring, and that leads to those conversations where we could say, this is a good student who could benefit from that check-in and check-out. And Mrs. Morgan, she is her morning duty, which I think she loves, is in our cafeteria for breakfast, and kids love seeing her. She always has a kind word and a funny math shirt, which she did not wear tonight. I don't know why. So as you can see, she's very approachable, and students love seeing her in the morning.
She doesn't have to turn on any technology in the morning, all right?
My children went to Van Buren and had some of you, and I can speak from experience there that you guys really were ahead of the curve a lot with the data and the swapping of kids and making sure they're grouped properly, and just seeing how far you've come is really nice to see. But going back to Tony's point with the communication, that's phenomenal, because we know that a lot of things get done, but communicating is so important, and kudos to you guys for figuring out that some people weren't getting that. I emailed because I thought I missed an email. I'm one of those parents that wants to know what's going on in my children's school all the time, and I'm looking for those emails, and I thought I missed one, but that was a problem on my end, the email you got. So same thing, I was looking for the virtual times. That came a little bit later for Baker too, but it's a nice job.
I just wanted to echo some of what Jen and then Jeff said also. My kids were at Van Buren, and actually I was able to sub the last couple of years, and just to see when my kids were there and then I was subbing, and then to hear what you're putting in place now for these kids going forward, that's huge, and it's very appreciative. And Sydney, your aha moment, I hope it continues or branches out to some of the other buildings if it hasn't already.
Nice job, everyone. Thank you. Principal Holmeyer and the McNamara team.
Saw we were making strides.
You don't need it, but we need it for the recording.
Thank you. If it's red, it's on. Okay, we're good, we're good. So we were making great strides towards some of our goals, but what could we really do to bring these to the next level? So we have separated out into our goals, so I'll introduce them as they come up. So we have Colin Hagedorn. He's a 5th grade student at McNamara. Dylan Borkowski, a 5th grade teacher. Sue Connery, 4th grade special education teacher. Olivia Popovich, 4th grade student. Courtney Bennett, 4th grade teacher. Carrie Ann Bertrand, 2nd grade teacher. And Julie Gottlieb, 1st grade teacher. So I will hand, well, I won't hand the mic over, but you guys can go ahead.
Is it on? All right, we're going to start with our district goal number 1, which is to focus in on improvement, personal challenge, and growth. Students and staff will be motivated and empowered to achieve their personal best. Our building goal is focusing on the writing. Through consistent implementation of the Writers' Workshop model and use of the district grade level created ELA units, students will demonstrate writing improvements through the use of on-demand writing prompts and established assessment rubrics. And in effect, these pursuits will lead to improved student performance on the New York State grades 3, 4, and 5 assessments. So how are we working towards these goals at McNamara? One huge thing we do is implement a block of time just for Writers' Workshop in our master's schedule. This allows both general ed and special ed teachers to cooperatively co-teach mini lessons. We work in small specific skill groups. We're able to have one-to-one conferences with the students and really fine-tune the writing process and the writing skills that we are teaching. So we did include some samples of what it looks like in a kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade classroom. These are all from the fall. So in kindergarten, we basically start out with proper pencil grip and letter formations. We work on telling stories through our hands and through pictures and labels. And then they slowly introduce proper capitalization, punctuation, grammar. And then we jump to 1st grade where we start with simple sentences. Then by spring, we're up to a 5-sentence paragraph. A lot of the classrooms, we call them hamburger paragraphs with a topic sentence, 3 details, and a bottom conclusion. And then we also, in 1st grade, introduce the writing process. of the rough draft, the editing, and then final copies. Then in second grade, they begin with that paragraph and then eventually build up to multi-paragraph writing. And then they're doing more written response to what they're reading, and they dig deeper into researching the skills across curriculum. Carrie Ann's going to talk about the writing process in the primary classroom.
Instructing students in the writing process begins in grade 1 and expands in grade 2, as Julie explained. Students are pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, publishing, and presenting in an effort to produce and share their best work. The writing workshop model consists of a mini lesson, independent writing, conferencing, a mid-workshop teaching point, and closes with a share. Teacher and student conferences are conducted one-on-one or in small groups, utilizing standards-based rubrics and checklists to help students reach their goals. Our plan supports students as they move toward independence, ownership, and a place of pride with their written work.
All right, I'm going to move into the writing process with 3 through 5. Just as you see up on the screen, we do use the same writing process, so what kids are learning in K1-2 is carrying over in 3-4-5. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the writing workshop units. There are 4 main units that are taught in reading and writing simultaneously through K5. We have narrative, informational, opinion, and research in that order throughout the school year. For each unit, students are given a pre-assessment to observe their initial writing abilities and then given a post-assessment following the teaching of the unit to measure growth. For our narrative unit, which is what we just completed, we focus on story elements and understanding plot development and reading in order to incorporate those components into writing. On the next slide, there is an example of a pre and post assessment. I know it's a little bit difficult to read, but there should be one in the binder that you have in front of you. But you can just see just from that pre and post how much growth we see in our writings, in our students, and if they are really embracing the writer's workshop. So today I have with me Olivia from my classroom, and she has really done an excellent job in writing this year and has embraced that writing workshop. So I wanted to have her speak a little bit to give you a perspective of what writing looks like for a student in the classroom. So prior to coming here today, I gave Olivia some questions that she could just write answers to in class without feeling the pressure, and she's going to use those. So the first question I asked her was, what does writing workshop look like in your classroom each day?
In my classroom, writing workshop is usually quiet because you have to focus during writing. And Miss Bennett always explains a lesson to make your, you understand your writing better, and it teaches you about sensory details and editing, and it helps you understand your story more.
I then asked Olivia what are parts of a personal narrative, since that's the first unit we just finished.
The parts of a personal narrative are the exposition, which usually introduces you to the problem in the story, and then there's the rising action, which goes over how the character in the story is going to solve the problem. Then in the climax, there is the big thing that happens in the story, and then there's the falling action, which closes out the story and ends the story.
And the final question I asked Olivia was, what revision strategies did you use in your writing?
I try to use as many sensory details as I can, so it's like so you can picture yourself where I was in the story.
Nice job.
Okay, so moving on to the next slide. In addition to the time that we dedicate to reading and writing in our classrooms, we also aim to integrate writing across the curriculum in the subjects of social studies, science, and even math. In your binder and on the slide here, you'll see just some samples from 5th grade classes this year where students applied writing skills either in a project they created or in just a quick formative assessment following a lesson. And in math, quite often we'll ask students to write to explain the strategies they used. Colin wanted to share a little bit about how he's used writing in different subjects throughout his time at McNamara. So I'm going to toss it over to him.
I have used writing in math by explaining my answers and how I used my thoughts and skills to solve the problem. I have also used writing in social studies by writing down important information in the book and answering all the questions correctly. I also use writing in science by using my observations and writing them down to solve the questions. Writing in these subjects has helped me in writing by teaching me how to explain my work and thoughts. It also helps me give details to statements, paragraphs, and stories. It has helped me as a learner by teaching me how to use certain words in different sentences, and I continue to learn more every day.
Okay, I'm going to explain the race strategy that you already, if you have not learned since the beginning of all these strategic plan presentations, I'm sure you know now, and it's used district-wide. It's a mnemonic device that we use in the intermediate grades that we basically implement in our text analysis unit and then use throughout the school year. It's a systematic approach that helps students construct an open-ended response to different questions that they're posed throughout the day in different subject areas. It's very helpful to students because they learn to zero in on that critical information that they need to answer the question that's posed to them. We find it especially useful for the diverse learners due to its consistent structure and pattern. Every time we answer this question, we start over and over, and they become more confident in providing an answer because they know that these are the steps. There's no question to it. It can also be easily scaffolded for our students with unique learning needs that can participate in answering the same questions with some basic scaffolds built for them until they learn independently answer them. Students practice restating responses to questions in many ways throughout the day, in class discussions, answering questions in morning meetings, Google Classroom questions they may answer, written responses in content areas, just to name a few. We do a lot of that all day, every day. Students become more and more proficient with identifying the detailed evidence that they need to support their answers through this process and repeating this practice throughout the year and throughout the grade levels.
Thank you. We'll have goal number 2. And thank you, my students. You did an incredible job. Great job. You're all taking notes, right? There's a quiz at the end. So under the, I forget what color's next in there, but it will all be things related to our school climate team that they'll be referring to. It's just small up here on the board, so we wanted you to be able to see it right in front of you. Up here now I have Brittany O'Reilly, she's our music teacher. Michelle Brannigan, a 3rd grade teacher. Annette Bunn, kindergarten. And Josie Pella, a kindergarten student at McNamara.
I will begin by saying that this morning Josie walked in with a piece of paper and a drawing of me with pigtails. And she said, you know, people like new hairdos, Mrs. Bunt. And that's why you get me like this. We're twins, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, were you going to tell them? You can talk about our morning meeting in a second. I just wanted to talk about our hair. Okay, we'll talk about morning meeting in a second, okay? All right, so our district goal number 2 is to provide opportunities for students to achieve their goals through exposure and exploration. Our building goal number 2 is to prepare for learning experiences, address the social emotional well-being and character development of all, using the Positivity Project and the Second Step Curriculum as Tier 1 support in all elementary buildings. Additionally, school-wide practices are implemented school-wide to support students academically, socially, and emotionally and behaviorally.
Okay, so to reach this goal, we have developed some action steps. The first step is to provide targeted interventions. So our Tier 1 interventions are provided to all students. These include the Second Step program, which Mrs. Bunn is going to explain on the next slide, and the Positivity Project. The focus during Positivity Project is on character strengths. We discuss these character strengths throughout the day.
We figure out which ones we're really good at and which ones that we could practice more. The Tier 2 interventions are individualized to meet the needs of a student. This could be daily check-ins, sticker charts, or behavior tracking. These are used to target an undesired behavior with the hope of eliminating it eventually. The Tier 3 interventions would be a formal behavior plan for a student. So this would mean that the Tier 1 interventions and the Tier 2 interventions didn't meet the needs of that student, and they need a more formalized plan. This plan is developed by a team of individuals who will work closely with the student.
Our next action step is our targeted PLC time. This is intentional time with our own grade levels. We get to come together and collaborate, formulate new ideas, run new things past each other. We're always reading and learning new things from each other and from books and book studies and things like that. So we always have things to share. And we also have the opportunity to call in other experts during that time. So we can have our occupational therapist come in if we want, our physical therapist, the school psychologist, the social worker, whoever we need to come and support us to help support our students.
Another action step is our school climate team. The school climate team has monthly meetings to brainstorm ways to enrich the culture of our building for both students and staff. And these meetings led us to an agreed upon list of school-wide practices that will promote consistency and improve morale within the building. And we get into that much further on slide 3.
So our second step program is our social emotional learning program. There's 2 key foundational skills for learning. One is self-awareness, the other is self-management. We think of the self-awareness part as being able to think about our own emotions, our own thoughts, our own behaviors. You know, I have the really little ones and they go all the way up to 5th grade, but even at this little, they are able to think about their own feelings and thoughts and behaviors. We just have to give them the support, the language to help them get through that. And then the self-management portion is the action portion of that. So once they assess themselves and how am I feeling and what am I thinking, what am I doing, what can I do to either fix that behavior or to maintain that behavior? That's a good one.
At McNamara, the teachers work really hard to create a safe, fun learning environment for their students. We get to know them and build relationships that help foster mutual respect for one another. The school climate team developed a list of school-wide practices that provide the students and teachers with opportunities to build these relationships throughout the day. All of the school-wide practices address the self-awareness and self-management components of our SEL curriculum that Mrs. Bunn just mentioned.
So these non-negotiables or these school-wide practices are things that we all do. I mean, we all have our own craft, we all have our own personalities and our own ways of teaching, but these are the things that remain consistent year after year so that kids know what to expect. One of the things that we do in each classroom is our morning meeting, and that's why my girl Josie is here, right, to talk about morning meeting. So I'm going to kind of do a Q&A with her. So Josie, what do we do after we unpack?
We do groups, we do morning calendar, and we do whatever we had to do, and
Do we do morning meeting? Yeah. What does morning meeting look like? How do we sit?
We say crisscross applesauce, and we gather up in a circle, and some people can be different and some people cannot. Some people can have same skin, but not as other people.
And in morning meeting, we talk about what people like and what they don't like. Like today we said, would you rather see the leaves falling or the snow falling, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which one did you pick?
I picked the snow.
Yeah, me too.
No.
What do you learn about your friends in morning meeting?
That everybody is nice.
You get to pick who you sit next to, right? Tell them some of the greetings that we do.
We do snow falling, air high fives,
hearts, and air and hugs.
Yeah, air hugs, right?
Yeah.
Do you like starting our days like that?
Yes.
Why do you think you and your friends like starting your day with morning meeting?
Because we're a family sometimes, and we want to stick with our teachers.
I love you. So morning meeting time is a great way to build community. I've been here 18 years. We didn't always do this. This is something we've been doing the past few years, and it's awesome. It's not getting the kids into the classrooms and go right to work. It's a nice way to settle in, discuss the morning. How was your bus ride in? How was your morning? Did you have breakfast? Get everybody at that same level to be able to learn. We get to know one another. We get to celebrate each other's differences. This is when we tie in our positivity project strengths. We will either introduce the new strength or we will reinforce the strengths, talk about expectations. An example of that, something else that's consistent throughout the whole school, is our voice level system. You can talk to any kid at McNamara and they know if we ask for a level 0, silence, right? We don't often ask for a level 3, but sometimes we do. But they know what those levels mean. Do you have one more thing to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we give people what they need.
And I did not tell her to say that. Our job is done. Good night.
Oh gosh, that's hard to follow. So our closing circle is like our morning meeting. It's another opportunity to get together and continue to build that community. So, when we meet at the end of the day, we talk about, okay, what things went well today? What can we work on tomorrow? Maybe you're a little bit loud in the cafeteria today. What are we going to do tomorrow that, we don't have to turn the lights off during, our lunchtime? Mm-hmm. So we set goals for the next day. We talk about what went well. We remind each other that every day is a new day. It's a new opportunity. And we also reflect on these P2 strengths. So, did you show any today? Did you see anyone else in our classroom show any of these? So it's another way of building community in the classroom. We learn about each other during that time. So it's super important, the morning meeting and the closing circle, to continue building that community and that family feeling in our classroom.
And sometimes the closing circle is just like, today is done. See you tomorrow. Cool down corners are also something that are in every single classroom. I know you've heard the other elementary schools talk about it. It has been an amazing tool for all of us to utilize. The kids know where to go. We have to train them how to use it, especially in the kindergarten time, because it's almost like toys and playtime, but they learn that it's a place to regulate themselves. There's a timer there. Sometimes there's multiple timers there. Just to kind of help them realize when your time's up, you should be regulated now. Come on back to the classroom and get ready to get learning. But usually 2 to 5 minutes is all it takes. That's been really helpful.
At McNamara, we have a really cool room known as the Zone. Basically, this room provides a time away for students. So everyone could benefit from getting away from a classroom you've been sitting in for the entire day. So it's a great place to go to get that needed time away. It's a sensory space that provides students with opportunities for large and gross motor movement. There's mats, you can do exercises, you can roll on the ground. You just have that opportunity to get some steam out. Time in the Zone is mostly scheduled ahead of time, but it could be used spontaneously if necessary. That just depends on the day and the students. When a student goes to the Zone, they are there for a short period of time, just enough to become more regulated, both sensory-wise and emotionally. We just want to get them ready to go back to the classroom for learning. It's kind of like a reset. Like if they go there to reset, and then they can head back to the classroom and they can get back to the learning that they're there to do.
Another thing we all do is our B's Deeds, McNamara B's Deeds. Students are given a B's Deed, which is a little piece of paper, when they demonstrate specific character strengths or when they improve themselves or work toward a personal goal. It provides an opportunity to celebrate students' successes no matter how small. The kids love it. It goes into a little treasure box in the office, and then they get picked for prizes on Fridays, and B's Deeds Friday is very exciting. Our behavior matrix is up next. I don't think I have to point out how different things have been in the past couple of years. Last year, being remote and hybrid, the students were learning, but they also had to learn how to learn that way. So they were simultaneously learning a whole bunch of things, and not to mention we were learning how to teach that way. But they still learned. I had 39 remote kindergartners last year. They still learned how to read. But last year they learned how to log on to a Zoom meeting, how to log on to a Google Meet. They learned how to do Seesaw, Google Classroom, mute buttons, unmute buttons, all words that were kind of foreign to them as of 2 years ago. They had to learn all that. So now they came back to us and it's like, there is no mute button. There is no unmute button. You don't have to log on. You can't go to the bathroom whenever you want to. You can't be laying on your couch. You have to get dressed. You have to come to school. So, everybody we kind of all have to work together, whereas, in kindergarten, we're used to teaching those basics, but we've kind of had to all go back to that and reteach the rules and expectations of being in person every single day. So that's where the matrix kind of comes in. It was developed to kind of help support all students since we're all back, thank goodness, in person.
And to piggyback what Annette just said, some of the students had to learn how to be a student again. And so that's why we developed this matrix. We wanted to provide students with clear and consistent behavior expectations throughout the building. And the matrix is divided into different areas of the building or times of the day. So those areas would be the classroom or special areas, the cafeteria, hallways and stairways, the bus, arrival and dismissal times, and the bathroom. So we have, our SEL team is reviewing these expectations with all classrooms and allowing questions for clarification. So they're making sure that they meet with every grade level, every classroom, so everyone hears the exact same thing. The matrix is posted in classrooms as a reference. It provides social emotional safety for the children. So the rules are clear and they don't have to wonder about whether or not they're going to get into trouble for doing something because the rules are there. We will make sure that we go over them often. We talk about them in my classroom. We talk about them during morning meeting and closing circle if necessary. The consequences of their actions will be more meaningful because the matrix will be used as a reference or a visual for the students. So if they do something in the bathroom that is not a good choice, we can go back to that matrix and we can look through the different expectations and we can talk about, okay, well, is your choice on this matrix of behavior expectations? And if not, then they clearly know that, of course, they're going to have a consequence for that and they learn from that. We can have an actual conversation.
Our next slide is our referral chart, which is so impressive. What did we tell the numbers? I don't know the numbers. I can't see that. It's too small. I'm 40 now. I can't see.
So we had 0 referrals last year, which was a drastic difference to what we've seen before. And Annette will talk to that because, the question that we get a lot is like, well, what does that mean? Nothing happens at McNamara, right? Nothing's going on there. And I think it really speaks to all the staff and coming together as a school climate team. Like this is a 3-year process. This isn't like an overnight thing and developing. We started with morning meetings. Like that was the expectation and doing them a couple times a week. And from there we've developed, that first year, all of those things, and then we shut down. But it just shows too, I would say any given staff member is having restorative conversations, and building kids' tool belts 5-7 times a day, and it's just a natural part of our climate at McNamara Elementary.
Yeah, we don't want people to look at that and think, oh, McNamara, their kids, they have no issues. Of course we do. I mean, humans, when you have humans, you're going to have issues, whether they're big humans or little humans. But we are committed to learn and grow and not just write a student up and send them to the office and be done with it. We want to be better equipped to help them before we get to that point. So all of the things Michelle and I discussed today, the non-negotiables, the things that everyone is doing in the classrooms and in the school to learn about the kids, to understand kids at a deeper level, to help them self-regulate, to understand that a behavior might be presenting, but it might not be what you think. There might be something else going on that you need to help them with. So we're taking those extra steps. We're doing the calming corner, the sensory strategies. We're finding our leaders. We're finding our other people with expertise in the building to discuss, specific students with and get ideas and bounce things off of each other. And I think as a whole, we support each other, and we don't have to write them up anymore because we're dealing with it at a classroom level, or, we get the help that we need to help them.
And the language being consistent across all classrooms, all situations throughout the building. I can speak as a special areas teacher. The consistent language creates clear communication between all of us that teach the different content areas. And so we all can be one big team, not just a fourth grade team, a third grade team, a special areas team, but we're a McNamara family, and we help our kids in the same way, and we hope that they help each other that way too.
Can I have my goal 3 people? Our goal 2 and 3 mesh together very closely. Oh, can we get a round of applause for Josie? For you, they're clapping, wave to them. So this goal will be much shorter because it incorporates a lot of what you heard from our last goal here. On this team here, I have Marilyn Sindoni, our school psychologist, Jeff Seltzer, our school social worker, and Luke Smith, our RTI math provider.
So goal 3 is up there for the building. Not going to read that. You can kind of see that. We'll go to the next slide with our action steps for collaboration. We have shared representation on the building leadership team. As you see the size of the team, there's not anybody who is not represented on that. The DIE committee, we have regularly scheduled grade level and data team collaborative meetings, community partnerships and virtual experiences. So just kind of an example of like one of those has been with the Syracuse Mets. Like the 4th and 5th graders have done educational day pre-COVID, and they send like educational activities, and then you go to the stadium and participate in the game. 4th and 5th grade students have loved that. Last year with COVID, they still offered a virtual experience of that, which was great except for everybody except for RJ, who had to orchestrate that whole thing.
Then also we have SEL, or social emotional learning, taking place in the classroom as a Tier 1 intervention, but we also use second step and SEL learning in many forms that you've heard about tonight as Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions as needed and as requested by classroom teachers. PTA is also a great partnership with the book fair, classroom supports, and of course the virtual field trips. And then extracurricular activities include a number of clubs, including wellness, STEM, yearbook, clay, and world language.
You heard a little bit about that growth mindset already from Van Buren. So we talked also about the Grow the Green protocol. So we've been incorporating the Positivity Project since 2018. And added the second step in 2019. And so we took a look at our data from the fall of 2018 compared to the fall of 2019, and we're really looking to grow that green and reduce those red areas. The next slide, Joe, we kind of broke out some of those areas of concern over the past few years. So this would be our cohort. Our 5th graders started this in 2nd grade. So right now, our 3rd graders have had this their whole academic career. So we've looked at the high-risk concerns for conduct have significantly decreased, negative affect, the cognitive attention pieces, the social and the academic functions. So you can see over time as we've implemented all of these Tier 1 and Tier 2 and 3 systems that we are seeing some really positive results in our data when we start looking at the big picture. As far as going back to that collaboration that we've been doing, Mrs. Bunn gave a little bit of an example, but just to elaborate a little bit more, over the past couple of years, the education of some of our students, especially our kindergarten students, experience an interruption or complete lack of access to preschool, we are seeing more students that come to school never having correctly held a pencil or knowing how to hold and use a pair of scissors. So just an example that we did recently that ended up being so powerful was bringing our OT into our PLC meetings where she demonstrated basic tasks that everyone can use throughout the whole classroom, and then also fielded questions to try to problem solve. And we're really trying to utilize all of our resources within the building and collaborate even more to meet the needs of our students. And even with the pandemic, we look at this data and see that we really are moving in the right direction as we look at our building as a whole.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank you guys. This was longer than normal tonight, but I feel like it's, I think, probably a year and a half. We only presented once. So, and I want to take a couple of moments to recognize the amazing staff, students, and families of McNamara. This plan isn't written by a single team. Rather, it's our entire school. But that won't even be correct because we are a family at McNamara, and it is a part of each of us. As you know, it takes an entire hive to support and nurture each bee. Can I have the McNamara Hive please stand up? I want to thank you guys for your constant dedication and support. You each play an intricate role in our hive, and I'm so grateful for each one of you. I think it's important to recognize that this plan is just a small portion of all the amazing work that the McNamara elementary staff contribute to daily, and also the district staff as a whole. I know other elementary schools, we work closely with one another. You know, when I look at this staff and I reflect on 22 months, right? Like when we think of that and you say that number, that's a lot, but you know, and we talk about how are we growing kids academically, and I want to recognize it's the whole child. So, you know, I know there's a staff member in this room that during closure drove to a student's house every day during the pandemic to provide academic instruction and social emotional support. There's a staff member here who met with a student weekly over the summer to continue routines and procedures. Staff member here that provides snacks to students daily who are unable to do so financially themselves. A staff member here secretly puts $5 on a student's lunch account so they can get ice cream in the cafeteria like their peers. Staff member here meets with a student at the public library free on their own time to help that student with additional interventions that they need. And just the other day, a staff member came in with a new winter coat and boots for a student. These are a few of the many things the amazing staff at McNamara do to support the whole child each and every day. So we've been gone for a long time from one another. I invite you guys to come on over to McNamara. You know, hearing this is a portion of what we do, but really seeing it in action. They are an incredible staff, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of that hive. Thank you, guys. I should ask, are there, or do
I have no questions, but I just have to say, I think, you know, the word family really sticks out, but never apologize for the length of a presentation because it has been a long time and we haven't been able to get into the buildings to actually see all this wonderful stuff. The whole time seeing the children as part of this presentation, I've had a huge smile behind here because it's been so long since I've seen children that age and how well they spoke and what they're gaining from their experience at McNamara. But, you know, these strategic plan presentations this year, I would say, are way more detailed than they have in the past, and it really helps us get a real feel for what's going on in the building. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. And really, pop on over anytime.
Great job. Great job, everyone. Thank you. So I also think it should be pointed out that this is beyond the normal hours for our teachers, and you're very, very dedicated, and we appreciate it very, very much. So thank you so much. Moving right along, I'm going to flip my, the next up is the capital project, but if I could do my superintendent report quickly, and then we'll go into, because I know that we want to talk about the capital project as a, collectively as a board. So a couple updates. Unfortunately, Denise wasn't able to join us tonight, Mrs. Falso, because of the connectivity issues with the virtual technology, what we're experiencing here. Just as a quick update, I know RJ ordered the equipment, so if in fact we do need to use the virtual option, it'll be a much cleaner and better experience as we move forward. And once that all comes in, the overall plan will be to host the board meetings at the Transportation Center. So that'll be forthcoming. RJ, you're thinking at the end of the beginning of the next, in January, right, at some point? Yes, sir. Okay. Well, I know you'll keep us posted, RJ, and I appreciate that. If you didn't hear, RJ said 6 to 8 weeks is the timeline because of all the equipment's backed up as far as supply and demand is concerned. So, but I know you're on it, RJ, and again, I appreciate all your help. So the project, I'm going to skip over that for right now. 5 to 11 COVID clinic at Durgee. We'll be hosting a immunization clinic here at Durgee. November 22nd, 4 to 8. That'll be the first dose. The second date will be December 13th, again, 4 to 8, and that'll be the second dose. And we have that information on our webpage, and I think it's on social media as well. And it's also on our webpage, and it went out in our Friday parent letter.
You said 5 to 11. Is that grade or age? Sorry for
that's
my
age. That's age.
Age,
Jeff.
right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Budget committee meetings are well underway and taking place, and there'll be several of them as we proceed through the remainder. I won't say the remainder of the school year, but as we move along the year. I also wanted, before we jump in, the next item is the capital project. I think it's extremely important, and I know all the people that put the entire project together, and I know we talked a little bit about it at facilities. It took an awful lot of time and a lot of effort from the community, as well as our consultant professionals, administrators and teachers here and community members. It's also important to recognize, so I want to thank them all for all the efforts that they put in, because that was an awful lot of time and a big time investment. So now what? We're starting from scratch is what I believe, and we'll talk about it in greater depth. But I believe we can still extract a lot of the recommendations from that report. And I think it's extremely important that we all get on the same page. And that's the board, that's the administration, that's the community, that's the teachers. And I think it's a very easy thing to do through good communication. So we want to put together a project that we all believe in, that we all feel clear about, and that we clearly understand where we're going. And I think there is value, to Jeff made a great point of getting more current data. Not that the report in Seversky's report isn't accurate, but let's get affirmation that we're still on the same page. So what I'm looking for, and I really want to open this up for a discussion with the board, what we really need is guidance as far as what is our vision, what is our overall vision, and to be able to articulate that and share that with the community as well as our staff. But it's extremely important for us to all get on the same page and work together. So having said that, I would like to maybe have one of the facility members report out on our meeting earlier, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe we should start just by filling in the board members that weren't at the facility committee, kind of what we discussed. I can get started, and we have plenty of us to fill it in. But you know, after last meeting we had at the transportation center, I think it was apparent that, you know, the board wasn't all on the same page as far as moving ahead with the recommendations of the Funding the Future Committee. Lots of, you know, questions were asked. I think some board members felt they weren't necessarily informed along the way, which I think tried to do the best we could. I don't feel that way, but some expressed that. So, you know, some questioned the Funding the Future. You know, there's no notes, there's no information. You know, I felt the report reflected what came out of that quite well, but obviously we don't have a consensus here. So I think because of that, the board or the committee discussed, you know, if we're not on the same page on some basic things like should we have 7 through 9 at Durgee, should we move 5th grade over to, you know, some of the key, in my opinion, key things that came out of the report. If we're not on the same page at that, we can't move forward with a large capital project such as the one the committee proposed. So I think at this point, especially since the information, the point I make that you referred to, you know, the information that came out of the Funding the Future was, you know, pre-pandemic. Nobody in any of those Funding the Future things envisioned what we were about to go through, you know, just within the last couple of years. So, you know, this might be a good reset then to get the board, you know, on board with, you know, on the same page, and it gives us a chance potentially to recalibrate where we're headed with the Funding the Future now. You know, are we still in support of moving 7th grade, or where am I, 7th grade over here? Where, you know, are we still looking at K through 4 at the elementaries? And, you know, that I don't feel that from our last meeting that we had at the transportation center, we were anywhere near a consensus on that. So that's where the reset, you know, start over conversation came. I'll defer to my other committee members if they have other opinions or views of what we talked about. But
well, that being said, we also have, it's important for the district to maintain its debt service so that we don't have instability in our debt levy. If, you know, we don't have to do anything, but inaction would result in us not taking advantage of, you know, getting a significant amount of state aid on a $25 million project. So, you know, that's what's at stake if we don't think of something that would benefit our students and taking some action on that relatively quickly. So I think that part of it's out. There are after the folks that we have, there are architects, our project engineers, attended our last working session. They came back with some other ideas in terms of things that we can do to improve education for our students. So those are part of the report that we had at our facilities committee meeting that we can share as well. And then there's different parts of it. So there's the capital project. That's a big discussion about the board. You know, other reporting on that. We've got a couple capital outlay projects. That is money, you know, a small part of money, $100,000 a year that, you know, we use on an annual basis to kind of maintain some things, get a few things in. We're looking at some new traffic patterns in some of the buildings. We'll use that money for PA systems. Is a safety issue that we need to update in a couple buildings. If we don't have working PA systems, we can't communicate across the building in case of emergency. So those are some things that we're looking at in terms of capital outlay projects. We got some updates on some of the projects that were already voted on and in process.
I think along with the capital project, the two presentations they brought for us today, they leave an option to where things can be done now, but it doesn't lock us into anything going forward into the future. It's something that we can get done before the date. And what was the date, Kim?
For the project vote or for the debt falling off?
The debt falling off. And what
The
we
debt
have.
falling off, I believe, is 26, 27. Yes, we make our last payment for that first debt, the first piece of the debt that falls off. Our last payment will be in 25, 26.
Yeah, and I think when we outbrief, you were going to run through the timeline so that the board knew we're kind of under pressure for getting something if we want to keep that, if we want to take advantage of that debt and service coming off or whatever. So we were going to have Kim run through that tonight so the board understood the urgency of, replanning to something that we can fit in there because, the clock's been ticking for a while and now we're kind of at a stalemate, so we need to kind of figure out what we're doing going forward. But sorry to interrupt, Brad.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And I think it also leaves the reset, as you were talking about, the things that we can do now here in Durga, the different options that we can go back to that slide, those slides, right, to show that the things that we can do now. Like I said, it doesn't lock us into doing anything going into the future, but it also, we don't lose the money, and it still gives us a chance to do some kind of reset to look and see what the community is looking for now, what we want to do going forward.
I think it would be irresponsible if we did put something up to take care of this debt service. And there's definitely plenty to be done to take care of the debt service. So I think that's something we really need to do, and they did present us with 2 options, and I think they need direction. And now, as a committee, we're afraid to give direction because of, other things that have happened. And frankly, I think if we put something up, we need to look at what we need for the debt service and go from there. Because I think we have to have something that's acceptable to the voters, and that was my biggest concern from the beginning. It's pointless to put something up that's probably not going to get passed. It puts you that much farther behind, and doing it in phases like this, I think you have a better way to move forward. And if we do that and give that direction now with either one of these options, we have plenty of time to discuss what we do with pre-K through 6th grade and look at our facilities again. We can actually do another jump start or kick start the process over with fresher data and post-pandemic numbers and information.
Well, even with staying kind of in certain budget parameters, we also need to think about, what is going to provide, what is going to give us the most improvement for the kids in terms of the educational program.
Maximize your state aid, as Jamie's always coming out with. Got to maximize your state aid.
Well, you can spend a lot of money on something that's not going to improve the educational program, so you got to think about what that money's spent on.
Yeah, so might be a good time for Kim to run us through. Do you want to recap briefly? Well, A, the 2 options, and then B, the timeline, because you guys want some direction soon, and we as a committee felt we couldn't give that to you. So it's probably worth the whole board knowing where we're at.
So this is a timeline for a May vote. So really, in order for us to have all of the work done and close out a project by the time our debt needs to be added onto our books to maintain that stable local share, we really need to go out with a vote in either May or June of this year. So really, again, we're kind of on a tight timeline. This is a proposed schedule, a draft proposed schedule for a May 22 vote. And if you take a look at that in November, we really should have a pretty good idea of what it is that we are going to be asking to do. So really, tonight we kind of just came up with some scenarios, conceptual scenarios, without really having a lot of guidance about what is the tolerance for the size of the project that we're going out with. And if we have a number that we're shooting for the size of the project we're going out with, then we can kind of build the scope into that, because we don't want to come back with a project that isn't going to fit into what we believe the taxpayers are tolerant of. So when we talk about that, we have a $10.5 million project that the debt's falling off. So if you look at that number to start with, and then fiscal, once we narrow this down, fiscal can run specific scenarios like we had before, but it's very hard when we're talking abstractly about what we're looking for. So if you start with that number of 10.5, if we add some capital reserve to that, and then if we feel like there is a tolerance for a small tax levy increase, what does that look like? So we know about what size project we're going out with. Because right now we really don't know. We know it's at least 10.5, and then like I said, whatever we want to add for capital reserve, and then whatever we'd like to add for the tax levy increase. Now be mindful, and Jim King spoke a lot about this, is our maximum cost allowances for each building renew every 5 years, which help with our aidability. And also when we're renovating within our spaces, that helps with aidability too. So all of these factors we need to take a look at and pay attention to, and for this first part of the project, and then also if we decide that we're going to go out with additional projects later. But we really need to Joan's point, we really need to be fiduciarily responsible in getting a project out soon to our voters so that we maintain the debt that we have at least. Now we know inflation continues to be an issue, and we know that every time we bring debt on our books, we're not going to get as much work 15 years down the road as we get today. So I think those are all factors that we need to take into place while we're being mindful of our taxpayers, obviously, in the situation that we're in with COVID. So there's a number of factors to come into play, but what I'm really suggesting here is, do we want to only maintain our debt that we have, or do we want to try to add a little bit to it each time we go out? So really, a couple of major factors that we talked about tonight is what size of project are we looking at in dollars, and then how does that impact us in the future? Being mindful that we've already started minimal communication, but I do think we put in the Friday letter some information that we had out in the Hive, which I think it makes sense to us, for us, if we continue to look at doing some sort of work here at Durgee, that we need to hit the reset button because of the volatility of the market and the prices that came back that we were not expecting, obviously, if it hadn't been for COVID. And we're giving the market kind of a chance to settle. Not that the market's ever going to go back to where it was, but we talked tonight at the facilities meeting again that the market may settle a little bit at some point to make things a little more realistic. So I think we can still, talk about that message, and to Superintendent's point earlier in regards to the work that's already been put into the committee. So I think we can, talk about this all logically going forward, but we definitely need to have some guidance about where we're going at this point with the work that we talked about tonight, and we can bring up the presentations. Really, the work that we're talking about, the first piece of this work would support our students in Durgee as it stands right now, and or support to prepare us for moving 7th grade if a committee decided that's the way we wanted to go down the road. So there was a lot of talk tonight about we're not going to do work that we're going to undo. We're not going to spend the same dollar twice, but this would all be supportive of our students for the group that we have here now, and or if there was another grade added down the road. I don't know if I covered everything. Please feel free to add.
And we've got to remember that it takes 5 years to see the result. So we're trying to plan 5 years out, and the longer we wait to do things, or the longer that we phase things in, we could be looking at really not seeing the full benefit of what we're doing for 15 or 20 years.
Kim, do you just briefly want to describe what's on the board?
So basically what we just kind of in theory we're talking about is whichever piece that we go out with for 2022 would be supportive. Jen, did you have something?
Yeah, what document is this on the screen so I could see it, because I can't really.
It's in the facilities meeting that's built separately.
Okay, which one is that?
It's a separate meeting.
No, I know that. I'm on it.
Oh, it's
okay. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So basically, what these are doing, the first one talks about relocating some of the offices with some supporting site work at Durgee. And then it also talks about renovating the media center and renovating some of the office spaces to classrooms and kind of recreating that main entrance that we talked about doing before, but not adding any additional space. So it would do some roof replacements, window replacements. And now, mind you, this is all very conceptual. Like we have not really narrowed this down at all. This was kind of, what do we think we could do for the amount of money that we're looking at? And then that would set us up to give us a few years out before we were talking about the additional work. So basically, we're still trying to accomplish all of the work. We're just spreading it out through 2032. Now, mind you, we've talked about having space for UPK, and that would still be something that we're going to have to manage in a different way. And having space in all of our buildings isn't an option for UPK right now. So we'd still have to have that discussion down the road. And then the second option is really just different work, but kind of having the same concept. So that would be doing the gym addition, the cafeteria, kitchen renovations, CTE, art, music renovations. So basically, we're still doing the work at Durgee to support one or the other, because then I can let someone else speak to the fact of the space concerns that we have here at Durgee now.
So when you think about, option B, the fact that we're touching these instructional spaces, look at the cafeteria. We're having students have lunch in a space that's and this is the size of a cafeteria in many elementary schools, let alone a junior high school with, two grade levels. They run into issues with how they structure, so certainly a larger space would be beneficial here. When you think about the gymnasium space, compare the gymnasium here at Durgee to the gymnasium at Ray. Ray's a larger space. There's more seating capacity there for spectators. And so certainly this would provide the ability to still do that work, whether it remains an 8-9 building or down the road a future board decides to transition it to a grade 7 through 9 building. The same thing holds true with the music, the CTE, the fine art spaces, the media center. Certainly, when you think about what we want to provide students with experiences, the space makes a difference. And having a refresh in those areas would certainly be beneficial to our students from an instructional standpoint. Not to say that option A wouldn't do that. Option A certainly does that work too, but the focus is more on the main office space and repositioning the main entrance to the front of the building. So no matter what option, depending on funding, is chosen, whether option A is, and then in a future project, the addition is identified here, still, there doesn't have to be a decision about 7th grade until after that point, if you're following this timeline. So we wanted to make sure that that was very clear, that this certainly can be done to benefit students without a shift if the board chooses not to make a shift.
But I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, what's been presented here is in these first phases, in whichever way you go, are needs and not wants. We need to think about the safety and security of the building and not have multiple points of entry. We need to think about the need for, improved educational spaces in this building, and being able to provide capacity in some of these spaces.
And there really could be of option C, which we don't know based on numbers, that brings in the safety and security and maybe, portion of those renovations.
And that's the point I was going to make, is I don't want the board members that aren't on the facility committee to think if we go with the 10 million whatever debt service, if we just fill that gap, you're getting everything in that 2022 project. We have no idea, because we're kind of rebaselining here, what those cost. So if we gave direction at, let's just fill the current capital, or not capital, debt service, if we just fill that, they're going to go back and work. That's the direction they're looking for, so that they can go back and work. How much of that list can we get in there? Are there, 1 or 2 of these, or is it all of them, so forth. So I just want to make sure the board didn't think we were proposing everything in that list, because to date we haven't, really agreed as a group how much are we willing to even go out there for? So that's kind of the baseline that Kim's looking for, is what is this board comfortable with, so that they can go off and run these scenarios and even see if option A and B are possible based on the guidelines we give. And that's kind of where we ended the facility committee, because based on our last meeting, we felt that, you know, this board needs to be in on that whole discussion, since we didn't get there as a committee. So
so Kim mentioned a $10 million project coming off of the debt service approximately. The 25 million number came from the maximum aidable, I forget the terminology, but based on the number of students that we have in this building, that's the total that we can get to and still receive that 85%, 87% aid back from the state.
So we would need to raise taxes to help support the other portion of that project, but beyond what the debt's falling off, and or use capital reserve.
Correct, and but we're looking at getting a significant amount of aid on that project. You know, if we're only paying 15% as our local share, and we've got a capital reserve, you know, that impact may be much more minimal.
Yes, the impact is much more minimal. That's exactly it, because we're not exceeding the maximum cost allowance and because we're maximizing the aid over the years. And that's also allows it to reset every 5 years, which is by phasing the project, you're having that renew so that you have that portion that you can get aid on more than once, so to speak, because every 5 years it renews, if that makes sense.
And I think that's why they built in the phasing in those years that they did.
And another point here, you'll notice, again, for those not on the committee that were at the meeting, this, you know, obviously much less transformational than what we proposed last time. You know, the scope really is DERGI, and notice Ray is, you know, as designed, so no changes there. We took all the field work, the field enhancements off. We, you know, the stuff, I think there was some other small pieces, but basically stripped it down to potentially what this board could come to agreement on as far as, you know, the most important needs, so we could keep, you know, that service going. So that's kind of summary.
Did you say there was a possibility, depending upon dollar amount, to combine A and B? No, that's definitely not an option, or parts of?
Right now, anything is possible based on, you know, the dollar amount that we're given, but time is of an essence again, because we're really hitting the reset button right now. And when you take a look at that schedule, we are not ahead of the game, I will say, to be positive versus the reality of it. I really think we're behind, even for a May or June project. So we really need to have an idea. A dollar amount would be really helpful. Based on the fact that then we can go back and say, okay, this is what we think we can try to fit in, and then we can bring we can bring different things back to the facilities committee or the whole board if we have a dollar amount. But without knowing how much money we really can set aside for this project, it's really hard for the team to put options together. And as we're running these, the team is great, but obviously it costs us money to do all of those scenarios. So until we kind of have an idea of where we are, I think we're kind of in a holding pattern right now, honestly. And I don't know how that's going to impact us down the road.
I would suspect by piecemealing it and trying to do a little bit in the back of the building, a little bit in the front of the building, you're running into probably increased costs with construction, trying to touch different places. I don't know, maybe not. I mean, you're probably affecting the ability to use portions of the building during the school year. But you know, for 10 million, I would imagine we're getting a fraction of what would be on either of those first phases.
I would agree, and I would say overall, the cost of if we ended up down the road deciding to go forward with an equivalent project to what we put forth initially, it's going to be more expensive because of inflation and pushing things down the road. Our aidability increases. Hopefully the market comes back and isn't quite as volatile too, which would be in our favor, but those are all unknowns that we're speculating on, right?
So
Everything is speculation, but the main thing is now, instead of getting like 60% state aid, you're going to be going to 85% state aid, which also makes a huge difference, and everything is academically focused.
I would agree with that statement when we're renovating within our building. When we get to the point of doing an addition, that would be left to be unknown until we get to that point, based on building aid units and all of the other factors, because that's really what was part of what was impacting our aid ratio before, is when you start building new, it is harder to maintain that aid ability, even though we will have the maximum cost allowance there this time. So I agree with you. It won't be, you don't have two things working against you. You really only have one, which is that additional space. But we don't even know if we're going to do that at this point.
The other thing you have to look at too is the larger the project, are you going to take a risk of getting something voted down or something that's approved? Because then you're right back to square one as well. So I think they're looking for a guidance as to maybe a dollar figure.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah, and that's really the summation, because, you know, at the last meeting, we were talking about the guidance for moving 7th grade up. In these scenarios here, whether we do that or not, it still needs to be done. But if you do choose to go bring 7th grade up, or we collectively as a team, that's still, it won't hurt it. And these are areas that were also identified in the original report too. So not all of that information is just being tossed aside. So, but really, my recommendation would be, at the minimum, cover that the debt that's falling off, and then try to come up with a number. That's what we need. We need a definitive number of, yes, we want to move forward. So that's where I need the board to weigh in.
I think it's irresponsible if we don't move forward. That's all. Bottom line, we know we have to do this stuff to begin with. Let's do it. Let's get it done. And it's irresponsible if we don't do it, budget-wise, and just taking care of our facilities to begin with. And I think you start at that number, but at the same time, I think you can go up higher, much higher than that, and especially if you're looking at doing 5-year increments down the road, you can still space it out and spend a decent amount of money and do it right.
So
with proper planning.
What number are you referring to, Joan? Throw out a number.
Well, she said a $10 million project. I think anywhere around 20 to 25.
So trying to get as close to the maximum debt, what?
You want the public to say yes.
Maximum allowable.
Right, so that would be the maximum cost allowance once we get it recalculated for Dergy.
Which could be 25 million, according to the ARC, could be.
So that would equate to 10 million of it's the current debt service, and then an additional 15 million. So we'd have to kind of calculate out what the tax impacts of those are, like we did for the previous, just assumedly smaller numbers, but there's still going to be an impact.
We currently have 5 million in capital, right? No, more? Okay.
We were going to use 5 million.
Okay.
But you're also going to put up another capital reserve, am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, the proposal to discuss with the board would probably actually be a 10 million to go out to vote in May, as opposed to a 5 million, which we've had before. It just allows us to fund it, and I think, as a group with the situation that we're in right now, it makes sense to fund the capital reserve right now, because I don't think in the future, 3 years out, it's going to be more difficult to be funding a reserve. And that would set us up so that we would be, whatever the board and the future is of these discussions, we would be financially prepared for that.
So really the decisions we're coming to tonight are, how much guidance are we giving you guys so you can come up with a plan, and the facility committee can come up with a plan that we can get something rolling soon. So we have to, we're already at mid-November. I don't know, I think our next meeting's December? Yeah, so we're already and then by that time we may have some information to share, so we could, time's of the essence, but that's what the guidance you're looking for tonight. not committing to a project or a certain amount of money, just some guidance of use these bounds and see what you can come up with.
If you got that number, if the number was 25, are we looking at, we can do everything in the meetings coming up. Do we need to add meetings? And you need to add meetings? Okay. Well, we need to come out with a number or something tonight.
We need to add facility committee meetings is what you're saying, yeah.
So the facility, the board members on the facilities committee have all weighed in on this. What we need to hear is from those that are not on the facilities committee.
I would agree with Joan. It would be irresponsible to not do a project. The dollar amount, we have some money in reserve that you're talking about, as long as we get planning for the future, as Kim had talked about. The dollar amount, 20 to 25, may be something that the taxpayers can, support. And I think it'd also be beneficial if we kind of lay out a tentative, this is what we like to do over a reasonable amount of time and do it in phases. But definitely the work that needs to be done in Durgee, we need to do the work that's going to work with whatever we end up deciding. So I also agree with that.
I've agreed all along that we have to be responsible to take on more debt for the debt that's rolling off. And just looking at, going back to the two different plans and what Jen just stated about looking down the road as to what we do, like I think it was in option A, replace windows, replace roof, that type of thing. But then what would happen, and I think it got brought up at the facility meeting when I was here listening, then down the road, does that stuff have to all be replaced? No?
Jim King said that they would be, and Phil said that they would be looking at, what could, if, depending on kind of where we sat with future projects or potential future projects, what work could wait, in terms of roofs and windows, as to not have to spend those dollars twice. So our consultants, our architects, our engineering consultants would be looking out in our best interest in terms of really minimizing any duplication of work.
Now, one could say, because we're now stretching this out quite a bit, you do a roof in a 2022 project, and then the third one down is a 2032 project. We may be talking about roofs again, but that's just because of the duration of time we're now extending this out to. But I think to the point, the intent is not to have to redo stuff. Yes.
We still owe a duty to the taxpayers to make sure that we're getting the most benefit for the money we're spending. And inflation has brought up, prices of everything has gone up, and that's going to affect what we can get today as opposed to what we could get, whether it's 25 million, 10 million, what we get for 10 million today versus what we get for 10 million in 3 years. That said, the taxpayers are also feeling that crunch too, because every single necessary good has gone up in price, 20 to 30% across the board. So they're feeling that too. So I like Joan's idea of getting that the maximum amount we can with the maximum amount of project in a more palatable package. And I agree with Joan in that sense. So I think that was the 25 million-ish number. That's not set in stone, though, Kim? Is that?
We're far from setting anything in stone.
No,
right
I mean
now.
in terms of the maximum amount we could use.
Yeah, for the maximum cost
For the
allowance. So there's
maximum
there's a few different pieces to this that we come together on. But if we're all kind of I'm kind of hearing the same numbers right now, that's helpful, because then I can go back to the team and say, okay, you know what, this is like where we're at least starting with, and let's see where this gets us, and then we can talk more about options and how that would all fit together.
Yeah, and I think I just agree with everything Joan says. We want to make sure it's to the academics, to the kids' experience here. Yes, roofs are important. So those are obviously things that are important. But, if we're focusing on things that are necessary to improve the academics here, if we're not doing that large project that we've been talking about, but we get more aid, we get more aidable money, we get the tax that's coming off, we're replacing that, we have some reserve, and we're limiting the dent, I suppose, or the shock and awe of a project of that scale coming out for a vote. I just kind of agree with everything Joan has said. So, thanks, Joan.
Well, and it's helping. It's obviously helping with the tax impact over a long period of time. So, I think this discussion has been very, very helpful, so that we can kind of go back and hit the ground running and really get some additional information out back out to the board and out to the facilities committee, so that we can go forward. And then the next discussion we're really going to have is start thinking about, do we want to do a vote with our budget vote? And that's not a discussion that we have to have tonight, but do we want to go out with our budget vote, or do we want to go out in June? And typically this district, I think, has gone, depending on the size of the project, the 3.8 million was with the budget, but I think the bigger projects have been at a different time than the budget vote. So that's just another thing to start thinking about, just because of the time. Normally I wouldn't even be bringing it up, but based on the fact that that's only 6 months away, we need to be processing through some of these things, and I want to give people ample time to do that.
So if I just may weigh in one more time, and then we'll move on to our next topics and items for business tonight. So I'm hearing yes to a 25 million-ish range project, and following what we got from the original report, trying to spend the dollar once rather than duplicate. And what I'm going to obviously suggest with Kim and the rest of the team is that we follow that same format of impact and charts. And if you'd like to see anything different or more clearly, just let us know. But I think that by the time we put that last presentation together with all the tax impacts and what we're using, I thought it was fairly clear. But if you didn't like it and wanted a little bit of a different format, just let us know, and we'll certainly adjust. But appreciate everybody's time and input on that, and we'll move forward.
Yeah, one thing I thought I heard, but I didn't hear you mention, was focusing on the academic program. I said maybe I just missed it. One thing I thought I heard from the discussion, but I didn't hear in the summary, was the focus on the academic program.
Yes, that's the key. Yep.
And it's really, in summary, a focus on Durgee. I mean, this is a Durgee project, right? Not a district-wide project, right? Okay.
Thank you, Jason. That, with the addition by Matt, and I think coupled with what Joan has said and what Shelley has pointed out too, is about the dollar, not spending the dollar twice. I at least for me, that seems like a direction. So.
Great, thank you. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jen, please.
All right, moving on to new business, item A. Right. Okay. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the Baldwinsville Central School District Policy Series 1000 revised pursuant to attached. Can I have a motion, please? Move. Joan first.
Second.
Jeff second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. B, resolved that the Board of Education approve the new course proposals for Charles W. Baker High School and Theodore R. Durkee Junior High School for grades levels 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Jeff first. Second, Brian. Questions or discussion?
I have a question. I think it's more of a question. I just want to make sure that we're just approving these selected courses for the curriculum to be designed or come back to it, and then we'll see the curriculum, and then it will be approved to go forward. No.
So what you're approving is the ability for the staff to then place this in the course catalog and then do the more detailed curriculum work that would be associated with each of the courses. So what you should see on the proposal are some brief descriptions. Some of them have also listed major topics. So they're not going to invest time actually creating the curriculum. They've identified some of the core standards, but to actually do the unit by unit planning, they're not going to invest that until the board approves these course proposals. So it'll be over the course of, once these are approved, they'll do course selections, they'll see what the interest is, and then over the course of this school year and summer, they will fine tune and develop the curriculum associated with these courses.
Okay, am I on? Yeah. Okay, so just taking another step back. You said we put in the course catalog and then to see if the interest is there. I was under the assumption, I may be wrong, that these courses were being brought to the catalog or to the district because there was interest, or there is interest.
So yes. So what we have historically done is staff have conversations with students, which ultimately generates interest in creating courses that align to student interests. Certainly part of this is through conversations with guidance counselors, but until we actually put it in the course catalog, go through a course scheduling cycle to identify what courses students want to take in a calendar year, some of it's a lot of it's a lot of give and take with the selection. So a student might have an interest in taking every single one of those courses, but the reality is when they work with their guidance counselor, they can't take them all because they won't. It's not possible to fit in their schedule. So when I say to see if the enrollment's there are minimum thresholds for whether we run a course. So just by having these in a course catalog, it might be that we have to offer these every other year because there's just not the interest in a given year based on the student requests. So it's a process that is going to be different from year to year. What we're doing is we're giving students the ability to express an interest to actually potentially have the district offer these courses in a subsequent year.
So the board's role here is to say, to approve these based on the descriptions, not to approve, say, each module that's being taught, or right?
Correct.
Yeah.
What you'll see here, I'll use this one as an example, the advanced film. You'll see the course topic outlines that you're essentially approving. What are the standards being addressed? They will then take this work and they will develop a more detailed curriculum, unit by unit map, just like teachers typically do every year, every summer as they make adjustments. Yeah, so you're approving this as a course of study, potentially for students.
Yeah.
That was a piece of some of my questions. First of all, I just want to say that I think it's awesome that we're offering some different options for the students. I was surprised to see, like at the high school, there's only one elective in the English department until some of these, was it there?
It was English 9 Creative Legends?
No, possibly. No, I think was it the film one? Was that
There's
the English?
Advanced film, and there's a data science course, which is...
I think it's great, regardless, and also, you know, with the English 9, we're meeting all the English 9 standards through a topic that may draw the kids in, just get them more engaged, which is what we're trying to do. Even the guitar, I never thought about that before. You know, there may be many students who have an interest in music, but they're not part of the ensembles because there's other courses that they want to take or they don't have that time, but having an opportunity to have a music elective, I think, is also fantastic. I do just have one question, because it says grades levels 8 through 12, and it looked like based on the courses, the only one close to that was English 9. So just out of curiosity, what courses can 8th graders take? Because if it's English, it's not grade specific.
So there always is the ability for students to take courses if they have space in the room, in their schedule. So we do have students that are taking high school level courses. Certainly it could be English, certainly it could be an elective course that's offered at the high school. And then the decision would be made for the student to go back and forth to that building. So, you know, not that they would, but there's a potential that a student could choose to you know, do the introductory guitar or the technical theater 1 is an example of 2 that are on here that are elective options that technically a student, it's a part of a secondary course of study, which is 9 through 12, they would have the ability. Our grade configuration limits or minimizes the ability for some students to take advantage of all the elective options as junior high school students because of the configuration. But there are always exceptions.
No, I didn't realize we had so many students going back and forth. This is a great option as well. No, I was just curious because I said 10 through 12, which was so specific. And the only one I thought because of the grade configuration, and was just wondering how that worked with the grade specific standards for English.
The 10 through 12 is referring to the building where the course is being essentially housed or offered.
So just another thing, I didn't see all of them are saying that they're not replacing any courses. They aren't expecting any of it to interfere with any courses that are currently offered. So I was wondering, you know, if our enrollment stays the same, how you guys make those decisions as to what's, because you said you have to have a certain number of students to actually run the course. So what happens when you have like 3 courses maybe that have the same number of students? How are you going to decide so everyone's getting something that they want?
Yeah, so that's actually a problem that occurs every year, and the building principal ultimately has the ability to make those decisions based on working with guidance counselors and looking at the course request. So in practice, minimum is 15 students based on general practice. There has to be at least 15 students, but then you take into consideration the overall, all the offerings that are offered within the department, and certainly there's always decisions that are made every year, because if a student is now choosing to take one of these courses that's being offered, it's likely that if they were a student that was, you know, potentially looking at business options, they're no longer going to be interested in taking that course. So it's a little bit of a give and take. So that's a process that happens every year.
Are any of these college level credit bearing classes?
These are not at the present time.
Okay. The data science course, I was going through that's amazing, and that's a course I definitely would have taken. I was thinking, you know, what that would do to, you know, the statistics, but we have 2 different levels statistics offered at the high school anyway, but that course looks phenomenal. So I'm not sure, it looked like they found it from, was that the one from California they're doing right now? Or not, but that's,
yep.
So is that like a program that we purchase, or are we just using kind of like that core and then developing our own off that? Because
so our staff's actually going to be going through some training from very prominent mathematics instructor, educator at the college level. And so through that training, they're utilizing that to design this course. I believe the same thing with the English 9 experience. So they're pulling from other resources. It is possible that depending on how this goes and interest, we could look to see at some point whether these courses align with something that's offered at OCC. And if that is the case, there could be dual enrollment offered. That typically happens in some cases where we offer, examples of courses that are of interest and are relevant, and if we can align them to a college, we certainly will look to try to give that option for students. But it's not a definite based on what's being proposed.
Great variety in real world stuff for the students. I like it. Does anyone have any other questions or comments on this? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. Item C. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the disposal of surplus equipment and instructional material pursuant to the attached. Can I have a motion, please? Joan first, Tony second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes 7-0. We've now moved to board roundtable, and I saw some emails about, I think I saw one.
I sent an email out this afternoon. I'm sorry about the late notice to my board colleagues. I wanted to bring up quickly or discuss having board committee meetings recorded. And that came into play with when we're discussing, and we have been discussing about the Funding the Future and the capital project, and just having meetings recorded. So everything's just actually there.
So this came up actually in agenda planning when we were looking at the board correspondence and committee reports. And that's actually how it came up because of some of our committees being virtual. We were just kind of going through that schedule, and we would just kind of off the cuff just said how much easier it may be, because not all of us can get to all of the meetings, beyond the committees, and some of us are on a lot of committees to begin with, just to stay up to speed with what's going on and getting more than just like that committee board report, which we appreciate. We've all given them for our various committees, but just, how many times have you gone through notes and said, oh gosh, I wish I could go back and remember exactly how that topic happened. I mean, I do it with board meetings all the time, just going back to refresh my memory, and how helpful that would be if that's something we want to consider doing this year or, in the future. And obviously a lot of the work begins in the committee level, and I guess, with the community, a lot of times they just see here and how did that get started, and, we should be providing as much opportunity as possible. All the thoughts to actually get to that final decision at a board meeting may be helpful for the community and for us as well.
If there's, as long as the logistics can be worked out and, there's able bodies to actually do the recording, and not always relying on the same person who has to be everywhere at all times, I think that's a very good idea. And then everybody could go see it.
Yeah, I don't know how you argue with that, other than we need to figure out the logistics, and RJ needs to figure out how to get to every committee meeting and record them, and,
Well, we
other than the logistics, I don't know how you argue with that. It's just we haven't done it because of the cost, logistics, everything.
I agree.
So
we've had audio recordings in the past where we haven't had to have additional people here, so that might be an option as well, to not have to video record it, but an audio recording may suffice.
Yeah, I would say the video would be much easier to manage, I think, than trying to do the whole video thing.
You mean audio?
Oh, audio, yeah.
Either or, it's fine. It's just something, to go back to for us if we're not at a meeting, or for the community as well.
Yeah, keep in mind, not all committee meetings are in the same spot. So like in a board meeting here, we have the infrastructure. We would just have to make sure we plan committee meetings for places that can be recorded. That's all. I mean, and again, I'm not opposing it at all. I'm just saying it's just a scheduling and technology.
That came up because we were talking about the committee meetings, and a lot of them are before the board meeting, so it wouldn't be an issue. There's some that are virtual right now, and those are easy to record. So the only other ones were held at the transportation, which is technology, which RJ, you have to be there anyway for that one because you run it. And then the only other one was the DEI, which is half and half right now, virtual and transportation.
You also have the
wellness, which is
wellness
virtual.
committee. You have the mental wellness committee. Unless you're not,
we're doing board committees.
Okay, you have the wellness committee. You have the technology committee.
Code of conduct.
You have code of conduct.
Policy, communications. We'd have to figure out where to meet for that.
So I don't.
Well, we do those before board meetings.
I think code of conduct is a district committee.
Yeah. Sounds easy
Just like
enough
the
to pull
safety
off.
committee's a
Sounds like you got an
district
action
committee.
item.
It may not be as simple as you think. And are any of them?
I don't think anybody's against it. I just think we need to have the correct technology, and if it's not visual, then audio should suffice. But it's got to be, where we can conduct business, not constantly focusing on, can we record it, or do we conduct business if we can't record it, or the priority is having the meetings and having them publicly announced.
We'll work on it and report back out on what the plan is. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Anything else for roundtable? Other than, I guess, for Dave, how are we doing on the SRO report? Were you able to meet with the SROs yet for the data collection for the end of the year? I know we keep bringing it up, just doing more of a check-in than anything else.
Yeah, I think that.
Or when it's done, just put it in the Friday letter, I guess.
Yep, I can do it in a Friday letter, but I think that last time we talked about, I was waiting, that you guys had the information, and we were waiting to see what information the board wanted from the SROs. That was our last conversation, because they have asked you to, they showed you what they wanted to do, and in the past, we had a little bit more lengthy of a report that had come. And previously, when we cut that a little bit short and we didn't present that much data, the board did ask for more information. So I believe what the SROs brought to you was kind of a revised copy of that, and I was waiting for the board to give me some direction on what they wanted from the SROs. That was our last conversation. We gave you guys the information in the Friday letter.
So I remember getting, did I miss something? I remember us getting two separate forms, one that was used at one building and one at another. It may have been because we used two different agencies, I don't remember. And I thought when we went to talk about it, you said it'd be easier because you're going to meet with the SROs that week to see what they could come up with and bring back to us.
Right, so I sent you, that's what I sent you guys.
Oh, you did? Did I miss something?
So that form is what the information that would be on there for the data. So from that form for you to review and then give me some feedback regarding if there was additional things you would want as far as data from those SROs.
So I'm looking for one report right now, or one form right now that came together. I think I missed something. Was that an email or a Friday letter?
I believe it was attached in the Friday letter. I can go back and look at it. That's okay.
No, I apologize. Yeah. I missed it somehow. Okay, I'll go back and look.
No problem.
And then we can figure it out next time.
I think you were going to bring that to one of the meetings and we were going to discuss it, but we never got to it.
Look in the Friday letter, see if it was the original two samples that were sent to us or it's a completely different one now.
And I think that Jason had previously provided the original forms that we were using, like when Marty Knoll and Deputy Nor was here, and then we attached, and I'll go back and make sure it was there, but I believe that we did attach it, if I was correct, Jason.
You know what we'll do is we'll resend it in a separate email, or we can resend it out in this Friday letter, either or. But we'll get you a fresh set so we're all on the same page.
I think I missed it, Mr. Thompson. Anything else for board roundtable? Okay, moving on. Resolved that the Board of Education enter into executive session to discuss the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition, sale, or exchange of securities, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value of these things. Public Officer Law 105(1-12). Matters which may imperil the public safety if disclosed, in the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion, please? Brian first, Tony second. I saw a hand. Tony second. All in favor? Oppose? Passes 7-0.